how are you keeping up your musical chops during this weird time?
Um, I've actually a lot of what I've been doing musically has been playing around in Pro Tools and just come up with new ideas. So I haven't been keeping up with my cowboy mouth chops per se, but
Hmm.
I have been. I've actually been playing more. Um, I've had more time, but I've been spending more time playing guitar just because I want to mess around with ideas, and I've got my whole recording setup going on down here in the basement of the house.
Hmm.
So um,
It,
helps with the social distancing from the family as well, keeping everybody happy and giving
yeah.
everyone their own space, which
Yeah.
is important, which is hugely important.
So, I mean, I don't know, that could be a difficult thing to describe, but like, with this experimentation and stuff that you're doing, what kinds of stuff are you delving into?
Well, so a lot of projects that friends of mine have been asking me to tinker with for years. I never found the time to do it, and now I actually have a little bit of time. So there's just buddies of mine that need some guitar on something. They'll send it over, and I'll drop it into Pro Tools, and I'm playing around with that. So um, that's about it. Just playing with different people. It's everybody seems to right now want to connect
Hmm.
somehow with everyone, and music seems to be a big outlet for that. So everybody is kind of sharing these creative ideas and hey, this is something I came up with. What do you think? You want to put something on top of it? And so that's been very
Yeah.
different, and it's actually forcing Cowboy Mouth to do the same thing. We've always um, the way that we've always done things is Fred and Griff are the main songwriters, and they continue to be honestly, but the idea of being able to have an open dialogue back and forth with new ideas and just email something over like, hey, if you're bored, give this a listen. And so the idea is there to hopefully spawn some new creativity and ideas amongst the band. But it's been working
Yeah.
with me with other musicians. We've been creating ideas back and forth. So nice. It's like music pen pals.
And then how does that go for you? I mean, with coming up with parts, do you just listen to what they have over and over again and then figure out, kind of get an idea in your mind, or do you just kind of jump in and try different things on the fly?
Um, well, that's the other nice thing about having a little recording studio in your basement is you get to go through all of your horrible ideas by yourself privately, and then
Mm,
if you land on something that seems tangible and like a good application for that song, and it fits the vibe that you feel like the person sending it to you is going for, then that gets to be the thing that you put out into the universe and send back. So,
yeah.
but for me, it's a lot of I'm not classically trained, so there's a lot of sour notes in there while I hunt through and find find exactly what I want it to sound like. There's my experimentation ends up I normally stumble on something that I like. It's instead of planning it out and listening and going, oh, I'm gonna play an E flat over top of that. I kind of play around
Hmm.
until I hear something that sounds cool. So,
Oh, okay. Okay. So just all very organic with you.
yes. Hmm.
Okay. And then, you mentioned that, you know, Fred right now does the bulk of the songwriting. Griff, does a lot too. What usually changes between when they give you a song and where you find your place in it?
Um, so in the past, the way that we've always done it is Fred will kind of come up with a group of songs and ideas that he likes, and along with Griff. And Brian and I normally won't hear them until they're pretty sure what they want to be on whatever we're going to release.
Yeah.
And by the time it gets to us, the structure's already there. Fred or Griff normally have the lyrics already taken care of, so it's already a song. And then they just look to us to add on top of that, and
Hmm.
add our style to it. So um, for me, when I first joined the band, Fred was he had more of an idea of exactly what he wanted, and you know he would kind of push you to give him what he was looking for. Where now he's over the years he's become, I think he just trusts the band more, and he's used to the way that we sound together live as a band. So
Hmm.
he actually leans on us a little bit more for our own ideas. Like, hey, this needs something, but I don't know what. So why don't you do your thing? And sometimes he likes it, sometimes he doesn't. But it's been really nice in the last 6 years or so. He's been really open to new ideas and outside of the
Hmm.
box things for him. So us bringing our own flavor to the table. So
Yeah. So like with a new EP, like a song like "Oh Too Loose," how did how did that come about with you, injecting your own style into that?
um, that one was that O Toulouse was pretty finished up as far as what he wanted. I think he just wanted a guitar solo out of me and some rhythm tracks. So I didn't do a whole lot of creating on that one. There was no
Hmm.
new palette that I really brought other than he just asked me for a guitar solo, and a lot of times that'll be the case. Like, hey, I need a guitar solo and I need you to lay down rhythms, and these are the rhythm parts that I'm kind of looking for. And that one, that one in particular was, I mainly focused on just doing a solo for that one, but I did play the rhythm guitars through the entire song, but it was pretty close to his original concept.
Okay. And then, well, that makes me wonder, from your perspective, what makes for a good guitar solo?
Um, Something that's memorable, to me is always better than something flashy. So, um, I've always been a huge fan of guitar solos that when the solo comes around, just think of people back when people could stand around in bars together. People are singing the solo
Hmm.
as much as they're singing, the vocal parts. If you think of there's Journey songs that way, there's Guns N' Roses songs that are that way. If it makes somebody air guitar, like and sing it while they're doing it, that to me is a good solo. Something that has a lot of feel and something that's memorable. Less can be more.
Well, that makes me wonder, when you're creating stuff, do you ever kind of try and sing guitar solo possibilities or hum them or?
If I'm driving around in the car and I don't have a guitar in my hand, sometimes.
Hmm.
But a lot of the times for me, it's I'll just play until something falls out that I actually remember. So if I'm playing through and I'm doing a solo and it's all in key, but two takes later I don't remember what I just did, that to me is not memorable. But every now and again you'll be running through something and you'll kind of feel it. You'll hit it and go, "Oh, that was kind of a cool phrase," and then that kind of sticks with you. It's just like a vocal melody line, somebody sings something and it gets stuck in your head. It's kind of that earworm. So
Yeah,
with doing a guitar solo, it's kind of the same thing, or you hope for it anyway. You hope to
right.
find those earworms.
And then you mentioned Guns N' Roses, and you've often talked about the influence Slash has had on your own playing. And I'm curious, as someone who is a professional guitarist, what, in your opinion, makes Slash so good?
I would say exactly that is that, you think about the guitar solo in November Rain or the opening of Sweet Child of Mine or countless numbers of Guns N' Roses songs have that quality where the guitar solo comes up and everybody knows how it's going to go. It's an earworm. It's in your head. It's part of the song, instead of it just being like, okay, here's a part where a dude's going to play really fast, and
Yeah.
which that has its time and place as well. There's a lot of music that's great out there where guys are real flashy. There's no way you're going to sing along with it, but you'll stop and listen and go, wow. But um, I think with Slash, I think he nailed kind of a perfect mixture of those two things where he has something that's very sing-songy and then he'll transition into something else with something extremely difficult you're like, wow, that guy can really play his ass off, and
Hmm.
then right back into playing something that's very melodic and sing-songy again. So
Yeah. And then, I'm curious because a few years back you actually got to meet Slash, and
yeah.
you know, what does one say when one meets an influence like that? Someone who, had such a profound impact on you.
Um, I didn't say much. I kind of had, I kind of, that was one of the very few times that I had that starstruck moment, and he was as kind as could be. He was, he was very nice and friendly. I just had no idea what to say to him. I told him he was a big influence on me, one of the reasons that I started playing guitar, and
Mm,
that I appreciated all of his music, and he was very gracious and said thank you, and it was a brief interaction because, and I think it was more because of me not knowing what to say and kind of that starstruck thing. So
yeah.
it's also for me as well. I've always been reluctant to engage or meet, actively try to meet anyone who I consider one of my heroes.
Hmm.
I've had things in the past, I've met people in the past, and I won't say who, but who people that I looked up to, and then when I met them, maybe they were just having a bad day, maybe they just got off a difficult phone call, who knows, but for whatever reason the interaction becomes less than what you've built it up in your head as it may be. And I don't generally want to cloud my perception of people that I look at as my heroes with, a personal interaction that I could end up, misconceiving, I guess.
Yeah.
We all have our bad days, and I just don't want one of those memories with that person. Now that being said, I'm totally down to hang out with you, Slash, anytime you want, but
Yeah.
uh, it's just one of those things where it's not that I'm not willing to hang out or talk to anybody that I look up to. I look up to Fred, I look up to Griff. They're like family to me, and they have been since I joined the band. But it's always been a little awkward for me. I'm not super social in the first place. I tend to not do a whole lot of interviews, and I tend to kind of shy away from that type of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's hard for me to put myself out there like that sometimes.
And then, you mentioned not being classically trained. So, like, for instance, was a lot of your development taking an album like Appetite for Destruction and just like listening to it over and over again and then trying to, stumble your way into discovering how he did things?
Yeah, that was exactly it. I would listen to things until they were so firmly locked in my head that I could I could hope that my fingers would find the right place on the guitar, and it was just trial and error. I started
Mm,
when I was 8, and that part of how I learned to play has been a good thing for me and a bad thing because I play completely by ear, which is which is great if I'm in a rock band and we're gonna go do a show, or if I'm just sitting in with somebody, I can generally like hop right in. Um, any kind of situation where somebody's got music and they're like, "Here's the charts. We need you to play exactly this. 3, 2, 1, go." They're not going to
mm.
get it. So that's that's hurt me in certain job opportunities. I've had to it's taken me out of the running for them because I was not able to fulfill that side. But with playing rock and roll and with Cowboy Mouth and Fred, it's actually been a strong suit for me because most of that show you're just listening to what Fred wants. So
Mm.
as we're kind of piling through our show, and if he decides to go into a cover somewhere, he's going to do it, and you've got to find it. You're already a step behind him anyway, so he'll just start singing something, and you go, oh, okay, how do we play this song? And you've got to
Yeah.
just figure it out on the fly. So um,
Okay. So in some ways,
that
it kind of strengthened your active listening skills,
yes,
whereas some guy who learned the charts might know the exact notes, but could get thrown in a live situation if, all right, we got to repeat this bar, or no, we're going off in a whole different direction tonight.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So, um, that's always been a strong suit of mine is just being able to hop in and just go with it. And the band I was in before Cowboy Mouth was very much the same way. It was Jimmy's Chicken Shack, and Jimmy is pretty well known for doing that. No set list. He'll just start playing stuff, and okay, here we go. So, you know, I I wouldn't change it for the world that I learned that way. Um, could I use some classic training and some probably yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
could definitely dust off that portion of things, and we all have room to learn and expand our palettes. So
Hmm.
maybe with this quarantine, maybe I'll start spending some more time doing that.
But I also sometimes wonder about the advantage of just approaching something from a whole different angle or perspective, just because, um, I had friends who played guitar growing up, and they would get, I don't know how accurate these things were, but they would get the tablature, in the magazine of
Right.
specific songs, and they would be like, oh, I did it totally differently, but they still kind of came out with the same vibe and feel. And, I'm wondering, if that's has its own educational value.
Yeah. I think so, absolutely. And I grew up using tablature as well, so I can read tablature, which is it's just numbers on a page. But um, I would when I started to actually understand the basics of how to play guitar and how to keep it tuned. I mean, that was always the hardest part is when you're first starting out, not only does it hurt and it's awkward and you don't know what you're doing, but then the thing goes out of tune. Most of us get, a cheap $100 guitar for our first guitar that even the best guitar player in the world has trouble keeping the thing in tune.
Mm.
The intonation might be off, so the farther up the neck you get, it sounds worse and worse. And then on top of it, you're trying to like listen to something and go, how is he doing that? And you're strumming your guitar and it's going out, and you're like, is it wrong? Is it me? Is it? I don't know. So tablature was actually a very good tool for me when I started getting a little farther along and actually could hear that my guitar was out of tune, and I would tune it up, and then I could reference those books and be like, okay, that's what this chord looks like that the guy's doing, and I'm missing this part of it, or especially with guitar solos.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are just doing a lot of stuff in there, and you can't hear every single note. And back when I started playing, there was no way to like slow things down. They
Yeah.
make there's different guitar interfaces now that you can put music in and play along to it and slow it to half speed, so you can really
Mm.
kind of fine tune what you're doing. But that stuff didn't exist. I had VHS tapes and
Right.
would wait for Headbangers Ball to come on, and I'd record and hope that they'd go to the guitar player for the guitar solo. I'm like, all right, there it is.
Right. And rewind, play, and
Exactly. And
or
then with VHS, I don't know about yours, but ours was you'd go to hit pause to see what the chord was or where the finger position was, and I'd hit pause, and every time it would be like pause, and then the white line would be over top of
yeah.
over top of what I wanted to see. But the face
Right.
was clear, the rock
Right.
face was always like right there. It's like, okay, damn it. You'd rewind it a little bit, and it would be a clip of the singer, and you fuck.
Right. No, I had those same experiences, yes, in the VHS days. Even when you recorded it, with or you tried to cram, on the high quality setting for the VHS, where it's like, okay, the smallest amount of recording time for, because you could stretch it out to like 6 hours, but if you only set it for the 2 hour setting, it'd be a little bit better quality in
Right.
terms of sound and visuals, but it would still, when you did that pause or tried to go into slow motion, it would just always, yeah.
Yep. And the same thing too with your first movie that had boobs in it.
Right.
Oh, damn it! Why do I only see your knees?
Yeah, the struggles of kids who grew up in the 80s, I think.
Struggles of
And, well, that makes me wonder, though, what's one of the more challenging guitar pieces uh, that you ever tried to learn?
Hmm. Um, I'm a quitter, so normally if they challenge me too much, I just give up on them. So, all right, I throw
Really?
away. No, I would say Crazy Train was one of the harder ones when I was first starting to play. Trying to
Black
learn all
Sabbath?
that Randy Rhoads stuff. That was Crazy Train was just Ozzy with Randy Rhoads.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but that one was pretty difficult. The solos for that. Um, I listened to some Metallica growing up as well. They were another influence when I was younger. And let's see, Welcome Home Sanitarium, I think, had a really cool guitar solo in it that I liked. It was kind of moody and had this strange scale in it to me at the time. So that one was pretty
Hmm.
tough. Um,
Was the
yeah,
challenge with a lot of these just the whole, just notes per second, or was it an odd stretch of the fingers, or I mean, what specifically made those things so challenging?
I've got another one for you. Call of Cthulhu from Metallica. That
Oh,
one was
okay.
hard. And I remember specifically why I was having so much trouble with it is it had this kind of like finger picked out intro part. And my dad plays classical guitar, and he always told me, he's like, you got to finger pick first. Put the guitar pick down, finger pick. You get 5 picks instead of just one.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to do that. I thought it was old people music and wanted to play metal guitar, and all those guys used the guitar pick. So, um, but part of the basics of learning guitar is, those guys that are really good, they'll tuck the pick away and they'll use their fingers as well. So I remember that specifically was a very frustrating opening to a song to have to try to learn. It was a Call of Cthulhu from Metallica. The
Okay.
other ones, Crazy Train was more the guitar solos and learning to tap, doing the whole tapping thing. That
Hmm.
was that was the start of me learning to do any of that. I don't really do much of that in my playing, so it was a little more. It was awkward when I was growing up, and I've continued to kind of leave it out of my playing repertoire. I can do it, but there's a couple of greats that have done it, and I feel like those are the guys that it should be left to. Eddie Van Halen,
Hmm.
those guys are the greats with it, and just let them do the tapping and find my own.
And then, you mentioned how you're a fairly quiet guy off stage, and yet I would describe your playing as, you know, um, sometimes aggressive, sometimes forceful, just really grabs you by the shirt kind of thing. So I'm curious, are those, two sides of the same coin? Is, one a more accurate depiction of your personality, the on-stage version versus the off-stage version?
Um, yeah, I think the way that I've always expressed myself was through another medium than talking or speaking, So it's always been guitar or just being creative. Um, I tend to get kind of minorly obsessed with things but I get into my own head with them. So
Hmm.
they're not always, music is one thing that I get to share, but a lot of the other things that are like that for me, selfishly, they end up being me just in my own head solving a problem or learning a thing or applying myself in that way. So yeah, that's kind of always been part of my personality. And guitar was that way for me when I started. It was a way for me, I had friends in school and, got along with people. I still get along with people. I don't dislike hanging out with people. I love my friends. But it was kind of that me time, like it was, a few hours during the day that I could go just hide in the basement and just be by myself and challenge myself, see if I could learn
Mm.
something, see if I was better than the day before. And so for me on stage, I guess, yeah, that is that outlet for me. Some people it's you know any number of things they look for attention in certain ways. I'm not even looking for attention on stage. It's just a way for me to express myself through music to people, and that's always been very comfortable for me. Like getting up and playing guitar in front of people has always been a comfortable thing.
Mm.
Speaking, on the other hand, not so much.
And then to shift gears, how did you react when Fred first mentioned the idea of covering John Denver's "Thank God I'm a Country Boy"?
The same way I react to everything with Fred is just okay, all right, man. You know, we're gonna do it either way. Like, it doesn't matter. So, uh, and it actually is a great song to play as like kind of a punk rock song. It actually
Hmm.
is. You know, it makes for a great punk rock tune. Um, I wasn't surprised because he pulls out all kinds of strange covers. Like I said, live when we're playing, he'll just go into something completely crazy and unexpected. So when he
Yeah.
said he wanted to do it, I was like, okay, great, fine by me.
And then was it more challenging to, find what would be a cool guitar solo for something like that? Or at that point, is it like any other song you've been handed?
Um, that one I left pretty simple. I just kind of, I'm actually having a hard time remembering exactly what I played on it. I have to go back and listen. It's new, and we haven't played it live very very much. So I tend to not listen to recordings once I've done them that I'm on. I don't
Yeah.
listen back too much. So, um, but I remember keeping that one pretty close to, I think, the vocal melody, and just kind of keeping that theme kind of going through that. I didn't try to go crazy with it too much. So, um, some songs it's cool to completely do your own thing to them, and that one I just kind of felt like, all right, we're already making this thing completely new and different on its own by playing it as a punk rock tune. So
Hmm.
might as well just make the solo kind of like, simple punk rock solo. So
Yeah. And then finally, what amazes me is you always think that everything that's there isn't anything else new that can be done on the guitar. There's a
right.
limited amount of real estate, there's a limited number of strings, and yet people are still constantly coming up with solos that just sound at least a little new, a little different. Uh, and I'm wondering, from that perspective of a professional guitar player, how how is this possible?
Um, well, I mean, the same guitar and the same amp and the same song played by eight different people is going to sound eight different ways. I mean,
Hmm.
it really does come down to the player, and it's your timing, your feel, how hard you press on the strings, how hard you pluck the strings, if you're finger picking that same phrase versus playing it with a pick, or I mean, there's so many variables, and um, I think that comes across in everyone's playing, and I think that's why it is an instrument that people are able to. I mean, there's billions of people on this planet, and we're all people, but everybody's a little different. So,
Yeah.
anytime your voice is different, your ideas are different, and I think, you know, even with a limited number of words that we get to express ourselves in language, people still come up with new ideas, and I think it's the same for music.